I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who'd investigate her own husband. But there I was, sitting in my car outside Ryan's tech headquarters in San Francisco, staring at a job application confirmation email that had just turned my entire world upside down. Let me back up. My name is Maya Chen, and I'd been married to Ryan Park for 8 years. 8 years of what I thought was a solid partnership. Ryan was the founder and CEO of a rapidly growing tech startup called Nexus Analytics. When we met, he was just another ambitious programmer with big dreams. I was a marketing director at a mid-sized firm, pulling decent money and loving my work. We built our life together, or so I thought. 3 years into our marriage, Ryan's company started taking off. He was working 18-hour days, sleeping at the office more nights than not. When he asked if I'd consider stepping back from my career to manage our home life, to be his anchor while he built something extraordinary, I said yes. I believed in him. I believed in us. That was 5 years ago. Now, at 34, I was ready to return to the workforce. The truth was, I missed it. I missed the strategy sessions, the creative campaigns, the thrill of a successful product launch. Ryan was hardly home anyway, and I'd grown tired of being alone in our expensive Pacific Heights apartment, playing the role of the supportive wife for a husband who barely remembered I existed. So I started applying to marketing positions. Nothing too ambitious at first, just feeling out the market. Then I saw it, a senior marketing manager position at Nexus Analytics. Ryan's company. I almost scrolled past it. Ryan and I had always kept our professional lives separate. He'd made it clear early on that he didn't believe in mixing business with personal relationships. It's cleaner that way, he'd said. No accusations of nepotism, no complicated dynamics, but something made me stop. Maybe it was pride. Maybe I wanted to prove I could get hired on my own merit at his company, that I wasn't just Ryan Park's wife but a talented professional in my own right. I submitted my application at midnight on a Tuesday. I used my maiden name, Chen, figuring I'd surprise Ryan after I got the job. Maybe it would remind him of the woman he'd married, the one with ambitions and skills beyond hosting dinners I'd stopped being invited to plan. The response came faster than I expected. An email from Jennifer Wu, head of human resources, asking me to come in for an interview that Friday at 2 p.m. I spent 3 days preparing. I researched Nexus Analytics inside and out, familiarized myself with their products, their market position, their competitors. I put together a portfolio of my past campaigns. I felt alive in a way I hadn't in years. Friday arrived. I dressed carefully, a navy suit that was professional but not too formal, minimal jewelry. I wanted them to see my work, not my accessories. I drove to the sleek glass building in Soma, Nexus Analytics in bold letters across the entrance. The lobby was exactly what you'd expect from a successful tech startup. Exposed brick, modern furniture, a cold brew coffee station, employees in hoodies and designer sneakers. A world away from the buttoned-up corporate environments I'd worked in before. I checked in with reception. The young man barely looked up from his screen as he handed me a visitor badge and directed me to the 11th floor. The elevator ride felt eternal. I went over my talking points, steadied my breathing. When the doors opened, I stepped into a bright, open floor plan. Jennifer Wu was waiting, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a warm smile. Maya Chen? She extended her hand. Great to meet you. Your portfolio was impressive. We walked through the office toward a conference room. I couldn't help scanning the space, half hoping to catch a glimpse of Ryan, half dreading it. I didn't see him. The interview went well. Better than well. Jennifer and I clicked immediately. We discussed campaign strategies, market positioning, brand identity. I could see her getting excited about my ideas. Then, about 40 minutes in, we were wrapping up the formal questions. Jennifer leaned back in her chair, smiling. You know, I have to say, I was intrigued when I saw your last name. Chen. Same as our CFO, David Chen. Any relation? I smiled. No, pretty common name. Right, of course. She paused, then added, though Park is common too, and we've got 2 Parks here. She laughed. Well, Park as in our CEO Ryan Park and Park as in. She stopped mid-sentence. Her expression changed, something flickering across her face. I felt my stomach drop, though I didn't yet understand why. As in? I prompted, keeping my voice light. Jennifer recovered quickly, but I'd seen it. That moment of realization, of discomfort. Oh, Just another employee. Anyway, she shuffled papers. Before we finish, I should mention, for our records, we need to know about any potential conflicts of interest. Do you have any personal or professional relationships with current Nexus employees? The question was standard. I'd been asked similar things before. But something about the way she asked it, the way she wouldn't quite meet my eyes. Actually, I said slowly, my husband works here. Ryan Park. But I assumed that wouldn't be an issue since I'd be reporting to marketing, not directly to the CEO. The silence that followed was deafening. Jennifer's face went through several expressions in quick succession. Confusion, shock, then something that looked like pity. I'm sorry, she finally said. Did you say your husband is Ryan Park? Our CEO? Yes. We've been married for 8 years. Is there a problem with? Mrs. Park works here, Jennifer interrupted, her voice quiet. Sophia Park. She's our head of operations. She reports directly to Ryan. The room tilted. I heard the words, but they didn't make sense. They couldn't make sense. I'm sorry, there must be some confusion, I said, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. I'm Mrs. Park. I'm Ryan's wife. Jennifer stood up abruptly. I need to check on something. Can you excuse me for just a moment? She practically fled the conference room. I sat there, alone, my mind racing. Mrs. Park, Sophia Park, head of operations, reports directly to Ryan. My hands were shaking. I pulled out my phone and opened LinkedIn. I'd never looked up Ryan's company there, never felt the need to. Why would I? I trusted him. I searched Sophia Park Nexus Analytics. Her profile loaded. Professional headshot, beautiful woman in her early 30s, polished and confident. The bio read, head of operations at Nexus Analytics, passionate about scaling tech companies and optimizing organizational systems. I scrolled down. Her employment history showed she'd been at Nexus for 3 years. 3 years. The affair had been going on for 3 years. I clicked through her posts. Photos from company events. Sophia giving presentations. Sophia at a tech conference. And then, buried in a post from 6 months ago, a photo that made my blood run cold. It was a casual shot from what looked like a company retreat. Beach setting. People in swimwear and casual clothes. And there, in the background but unmistakable, was Sophia. Wearing a bracelet I recognized, because I'd seen Ryan buy it. 8 months ago, he'd told me he was going to New York for a business trip. When he came back, I'd found a receipt in his jacket pocket. $8,000 for a diamond bracelet from Tiffany's. When I'd asked him about it, surprised he'd spent so much without mentioning it, he'd gotten defensive. It's a business gift, he'd snapped. We're trying to close a major deal, and their CEO's wife collects jewelry. It's called relationship building, Maya. You wouldn't understand. I'd felt small. Stupid. Of course I didn't understand high-level business dealings. But there it was. On Sophia's wrist. In a company photo. I was going to be sick. Jennifer returned. And she wasn't alone. David Chen, the CFO I'd apparently shared a last name with, was with her. He was a tall man in his early 50s, his expression grave. Miss Chen, he said, using my maiden name deliberately. I think we need to talk. What followed was the most surreal conversation of my life. Apparently, everyone at Nexus knew Sophia as Mrs. Park. She attended company events as Ryan's wife. She was listed in the company directory as his emergency contact. She'd introduced herself to investors as his spouse. David had suspected something was off for months. Sophia had access to company finances she shouldn't have had. There were expenses that didn't add up, luxury purchases charged to marketing budgets, travel expenses for 2 when Ryan was supposedly on solo trips. I've been gathering information, David admitted. I suspected embezzlement, but I didn't have proof. I certainly didn't know about. He gestured helplessly at me. How is this possible? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. How does no one question why I've never been to a company event? Why I'm not at holiday parties or investor dinners? Jennifer and David exchanged looks. Ryan always said you were very private, Jennifer said carefully. That you had social anxiety and preferred to avoid corporate functions. He said you'd had a bad experience at a previous company and wanted to keep your distance from his work life. I laughed, a harsh sound. I hosted dinners for his colleagues for years. I was a marketing director. I've presented to rooms of 100 people. I don't have social anxiety. He told Sophia you two were divorced, David added quietly. That it had been amicable, that you'd moved back to New York for your career. He said you still kept his name for professional reasons, which is why he couldn't use it with his new wife. The audacity of it. The sheer, calculated manipulation. I need to see the financial records, I said suddenly. Everything you found. David hesitated. That's confidential company information. My husband has been embezzling from this company to fund his affair. An affair with an employee he's claimed is his wife. I think I have a right to see what he's been doing with our marital assets. Our marital assets. The words tasted bitter. David made a decision. He pulled out his laptop and turned it toward me. What I saw over the next hour made me physically ill. Ryan hadn't just been unfaithful. He'd been systematically stealing from his own company to fund a complete second life. A luxury condo in Mission Bay, listed under an LLC but paid for with company funds disguised as corporate housing. First-class flights to Paris, Rome, Tokyo, all charged as business development but timed with Sophia's vacation days. Jewelry, designer clothes, even a Tesla, all buried in various budget line items. The total came to nearly $2 million over 3 years. Why haven't you gone to the board? I asked David. I tried, he said tiredly. 6 months ago. But Ryan's the founder and majority shareholder. The board members are his friends, people he brought in. They dismissed my concerns as professional jealousy. Said I was threatened by Sophia's success. I understood then. Ryan had built an empire of lies so comprehensive, so carefully constructed, that even direct evidence couldn't penetrate it. But he'd made one critical mistake. He'd let me apply to his company. I stood up, steadier than I felt. I need copies of everything you found. Every receipt, every suspicious transaction, every email that mentions Sophia or these expenses. What are you going to do? Jennifer asked. I'm going to get justice, I said. And I'm going to make sure he can't do this to anyone else. I left Nexus Analytics that day with a thumb drive full of evidence and a clarity of purpose I'd never experienced before. I didn't go home. Instead, I drove to my old boss's house. Margaret Torres had been my mentor when I was climbing the corporate ladder. She tried to talk me out of leaving my career for Ryan, had warned me about losing my identity in someone else's dreams. I'd been too in love to listen. Now I sat in her kitchen while she poured us both wine and listened to the entire story. You need a lawyer, she said immediately. Not just any lawyer. You need someone who understands both marital law and corporate fraud. I know. But Margaret, I need something else first. I need a job. She raised an eyebrow. Now? I'm going to take Ryan down. But I need to be financially independent when I do it. I need my own money, my own position. I can't fight him as the dependent housewife. I need to fight him as a peer. Margaret smiled slowly. You know, my company has been looking for a VP of marketing. Interested? 3 weeks later, I started my new position. In those 3 weeks, I also hired Rachel Morrison, the best divorce attorney in San Francisco, someone who'd built her career on taking down wealthy men who thought they were untouchable. Opened my own bank account and credit cards in my maiden name. Had my half of our assets professionally evaluated. Began documenting everything, every night Ryan came home late, every business trip, every time he mentioned Sophia's name without realizing the irony. And I waited. Rachel's strategy was simple but brilliant. We weren't going to confront Ryan directly. Instead, we were going to let his lies unravel him. The first step was easy. I asked Ryan to have dinner with me, really talk. Just us. He was surprised but agreed, probably out of guilt. We went to the restaurant where we'd had our first date, 8 years ago. Over wine and pasta, I asked him questions. Casual questions. How's work going? How's that new head of operations working out? Sophia, right? Ryan answered smoothly. She's excellent. Very capable. Are you too close? I asked innocently. I mean, professionally? We work well together, he said carefully. Why do you ask? I shrugged. No reason. I've just been thinking about going back to work. Maybe even applying at Nexus. I'd love to see your world. Understand what you do all day. He went pale. Actually pale. That's not a good idea. Why not? I have the qualifications. It would be Complicated. People would think you only got hired because of me. I smiled. I thought you said we should keep business and personal separate? Exactly. But Sophia's your head of operations. That's pretty personal. Reporting directly to the CEO, that's different. How? He couldn't answer. He fumbled for his phone, claimed an emergency at work, and left me sitting there with the check. I'd rattled him. Good. The second step took more patience. Through David, I learned that Nexus's board had scheduled a quarterly review meeting for the following month. It was standard practice, reviewing financials and operations. Rachel and I prepared a document. It was careful, methodical, and devastating. It outlined every suspicious transaction, with dates, amounts, and David's financial analysis. It included screenshots of Sophia's social media, showing her at events and locations that matched Ryan's business trips. It included testimony from employees who'd heard Sophia introduced as Mrs. Park, and it included one final piece of evidence, security footage from Nexus's parking garage showing Ryan and Sophia arriving together early in the morning, disheveled, more than a dozen times. David had been collecting everything, waiting for the right moment. The day before the board meeting, Rachel sent the document to every board member's personal email, not their company email, where Ryan might intercept it. Their personal accounts. We also sent it to 3 members of the press who specialized in tech industry scandals. The board meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. on a Tuesday. At 8:30, my phone started ringing. It was Ryan. I let it go to voicemail. He called again. Again. 5 times in 10 minutes. Finally, I answered, Maya. His voice was panicked in a way I'd never heard before. We need to talk. Please. I can explain everything. Can you? I asked calmly. Can you explain how you've been embezzling from your own company? How you've been living a double life for 3 years? How you made Sophia believe she was your wife while I was at home, actually being your wife? It's not what it looks like. It looks like fraud, Ryan. It looks like adultery. It looks like you're about to lose everything. Please. He was begging now. Don't do this. We can work it out. I'll end things with Sophia. I'll pay back the company. We can go to therapy. I'll do whatever you want. What I want, I said, my voice ice cold, is a divorce. And I want half of everything we built together. Everything you built while I was supporting you, managing our home, sacrificing my career for your dreams. You'll destroy me. No, Ryan. You destroyed yourself. I'm just making sure everyone knows it. I hung up. The board meeting was brutal, from what David later told me. Ryan tried to deny everything, claimed the evidence was fabricated, insisted I was a scorned wife seeking revenge. But the numbers didn't lie. The emails didn't lie. The security footage didn't lie. By noon, Ryan Park had been placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation. The board had voted unanimously to suspend him and bring in an independent auditor. By that evening, the story had broken in TechCrunch. Rising tech CEO accused of embezzlement and fraud to fund affair. By the end of the week, Sophia had resigned. I actually felt sorry for her. David had shown me emails where she genuinely believed Ryan was divorced, where she'd asked about meeting his ex-wife at a charity event and Ryan had made excuses. She'd been manipulated too, just differently. The divorce proceedings took 6 months. Rachel was merciless. We documented every lie, every stolen dollar, every manipulation. Ryan's lawyers tried to argue that I was entitled to a standard division of assets, nothing more. Rachel argued that Ryan had systematically depleted marital assets for his affair, that the company he'd built was partially mine since I'd supported him through the crucial early years, and that his fraud had damaged my earning potential by convincing me to leave my career. The judge agreed. In the end, I got the Pacific Heights apartment, half of Ryan's remaining liquid assets, and a structured settlement from the divorce that would pay out over 10 years. More importantly, I got my self-respect back. Nexus Analytics survived, barely. David Chen became interim CEO while they searched for permanent leadership. The company settled with investors who threatened to sue over Ryan's mismanagement. Ryan himself faced criminal charges for embezzlement. I heard through Margaret that he'd taken a plea deal, 2 years of probation and full restitution. His reputation in Silicon Valley was destroyed. The self-made billionaire story had become a cautionary tale about hubris and deception. As for me, I threw myself into my new role. Margaret's company was smaller than where I'd worked before. But I had real authority, real impact. I rebuilt my professional network. I spoke at marketing conferences. I proved to myself that I was more than Ryan Park's wife, more than the woman who'd sacrificed her career for a man's dream. I didn't date for a year. I needed to remember who I was without defining myself in relation to someone else. I went to therapy, worked through the betrayal, the gaslighting, the years of being made to feel like I didn't understand. I was too sensitive. I was imagining things. I learned to trust my instincts again. And then, at a tech industry networking event, I met James. He was the VP of product at a gaming company, recently divorced himself, with 2 kids he absolutely adored. We started talking about the challenges of co-parenting in the tech world, and somehow 3 hours passed without either of us noticing. He asked for my number. I gave it to him. Our first date was coffee. Just coffee. He showed up on time, asked me questions about my work, actually listened to the answers. When I mentioned I'd been through a difficult divorce, he didn't pry. He just said, "Me too. It gets better." It did get better. James and I took it slow. Really slow. I met his kids after 3 months. They were lovely, a bit wary at first but warming up when they realized I wasn't trying to replace their mom. James met Margaret and some of my work colleagues. We built something real, something based on mutual respect and honesty. A year after my divorce was finalized, David Chen called me. I'd stayed in touch with him, grateful for the role he'd played in uncovering Ryan's fraud. "Maya," he said, "I wanted you to hear this from me first. The board has made a decision about permanent leadership for Nexus." I held my breath, hoping they'd chosen him. David deserved it. "They want you," he said. I was stunned. "What?" I told them I didn't want the position permanently. "I'm CFO, that's where my strengths are." But I told them about you, your background, your skills. And honestly, your story resonated. You represent what we want the company to be: ethical, transparent, real. "David, I can't. I have a great position at Margaret's company." "I know. But Maya, you could transform Nexus. You could take everything Ryan built on lies and make it into something legitimate. Something good. And you'd be doing it at the company that was partially built on your sacrifice. It's justice." I thought about it for exactly 3 days. Then I called David back and told him I was interested. The interview process was thorough. The board wanted to make sure I wasn't just the wronged ex-wife seeking revenge. I had to prove I had a vision for the company, a strategy for rebuilding trust with investors and employees, a plan for sustainable growth. I nailed every meeting. 3 months later, I became CEO of Nexus Analytics. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The tech press had a field day. Scorned wife takes over husband's company. From housewife to CEO. Maya Chen's remarkable journey. The ultimate revenge. How one woman turned betrayal into a corner office. I didn't think of it as revenge. I thought of it as justice. As proof that I'd never been the weak, naive woman Ryan had treated me as. I'd always been capable, talented, strategic. I just needed to remember it. My first act as CEO was to implement a strict ethics policy. Anonymous reporting for any financial irregularities. Mandatory training on workplace relationships and conflicts of interest. Transparent expense reporting. My second act was to hire Sophia back. She was shocked when I called her. We met at a coffee shop, neutral territory. "I don't understand," she said carefully. "Why would you want me back?" "Because you're good at your job," I said simply. "David showed me your work. Your operational improvements increased efficiency by 30%. You implemented systems that are still holding the company together. And because you were a victim in this too." Her eyes filled with tears. "I didn't know about you. I swear I didn't know." "I know. Ryan was very good at lying. To both of us." "I'm seeing a therapist," she said. "Trying to understand how I missed the signs, how I let myself be manipulated like that." "Me too," I admitted. "Therapy helps." We talked for 2 hours, about the ways Ryan had isolated both of us, made us doubt ourselves, created entire narratives to keep his lies sustainable. About the recovery process, the anger, the grief for the time we'd lost. "I'd like you to come back as head of operations," I told her. "But I understand if that's too weird. Working for your ex-boyfriend's ex-wife." She laughed a real laugh. It's definitely weird. But I built something at Nexus. I don't want to abandon it because of his mistakes. She paused. Plus, there's something satisfying about succeeding in spite of him. Exactly, I agreed. Sophia came back to Nexus 2 weeks later. Some employees were uncomfortable at first, but she was professional and talented, and eventually, the awkwardness faded. She and I weren't friends exactly, but we had a mutual respect. We'd both been through the fire and come out stronger. James was incredible through all of this. He supported my decision to take the CEO position even though it meant longer hours and more stress. He helped me practice presentations, listened when I needed to vent, celebrated my wins. "You're remarkable," he told me one night, after I'd successfully closed a major deal that had been on the verge of falling apart. "You know that, right?" "I'm learning," I said. 2 years after I became CEO, Nexus Analytics went public. The IPO was successful beyond our projections. The company that had almost been destroyed by fraud and scandal had rebuilt itself into something stronger. I stood on the trading floor the day we went public. David beside me, Sophia in the crowd, Margaret cheering from the sidelines, James holding my hand. I thought about the woman I'd been, sitting in that conference room hearing about another Mrs. Park. How lost and broken I'd felt. And I thought about the woman I was now. CEO of a thriving company. Partner to a man who respected me. Friend to people who'd stood by me through the worst time of my life. I'd gone to Nexus looking for a job. I'd found my power instead. Later that night, after the celebrations had ended and James and I were alone in my apartment, he asked me something I'd been waiting to hear. "Do you ever regret it? Confronting Ryan, blowing up your life, taking all these risks?" I thought about it seriously. About the pain, the public scrutiny, the nights I'd cried myself to sleep. About the fear of starting over at 34, of rebuilding everything from scratch. "No," I said finally. "Not for a second. Because I didn't blow up my life. Ryan did. I just refused to keep living in the ruins he created. I built something new instead." James kissed me. "You didn't just build something new. You built something better." He was right. I'd started as the CEO's wife. I'd become the CEO. And I'd learned the most important lesson of all. I didn't need anyone to complete me or define me or validate me. I was enough on my own. Everything else, the love, the success, the justice, those were just bonuses. I went to Nexus Analytics looking for a job and discovered I wasn't the only Mrs. Park. But in the end, I was the only one who mattered. Because I was the only one who was real. The only one who'd taken the broken pieces of betrayal and built them into something extraordinary. Ryan had tried to make me invisible. Instead, he'd made me unstoppable. And that was the best revenge of all.